And many of you would have heard that we had water problems early in the year. And part of the reason for it was that the service parts that were needed to operate the reverse osmosis plants, they got delayed because of the, let's say, the logistics problems that have plagued all countries globally. Luckily for us, we've been able to resolve that issue, not only by getting in the parts to make those plants operational, but in addition, we have also added to the water infrastructure. So we expanded the Friesville facility by adding an additional 800,000 gallons per day. And Fort James, we constructed a new plant, and this is all during this period of COVID. We constructed a new plant at Fort James, and currently that is producing 500,000 gallons of water daily. There's a second plant for Fort James that will add an additional 500,000 gallons, but again, the reason why that is not operational as yet is because there's a simple part that has not reached us as yet. We are told that it will not arrive before sometime in November, unfortunately. And again, this has to do with the fact that there has been some logistics scarce. So the firm in Dubai, they didn't have the material to actually manufacture that particular part. So even though we have the plant, the second plant for Fort James is not operational as yet. Now, in any event, we would have spent in the region of $130 million to expand the water infrastructure in Antigua and Barbuda, because we also purchased a water plant, RO plant for Barbuda as well, and that will be installed very shortly. It's actually in Barbuda. So $130 million invested in the water infrastructure. We built a facility at Pigeon Point, and that was done in 2015. We also built one at Barnacle Point. That plant provides 2 million gallons of water daily. And in addition, as I said before, we expanded Fries and we also built out Fort James. So we would have added in excess of 4 million gallons of water per day. And there was an older plant that produced about 3 million gallons. We actually paid off for that plant $22 million. In fact, as part of our inheritance, the UPP administration back in 2014 could not raise enough money even to pay for water. And this is no exaggeration, to the extent that they had a bill of $22 million owed to the sole reverse osmosis water supply at the time. And it is my administration that paid off the $22 million, and that plant is now owned by the government and people of Antigua and Barbuda. So we not only found the $22 million, but we also spent at least another $100+ million to construct new plants. Now, we all know that Antigua and Barbuda has had a water problem for decades, for centuries. That's a fact. What has happened within recent times, for the first time in our history, and this would have happened during the last couple of years, and this is one of the consequences of climate change. For the first time in the history of our country, there's been no surface water. There has been no underground water, so even the aquifers dried up because of the effects of climate change. So in the past, all other administrations would have benefited from some form of groundwater or surface water. But we've had a persistent drought for a number of years in which the water supply would have dried up, at least the freshwater sources. So even if you go to Potworks Dam now, you'll find that there's no water there, even though we recently had a significant amount of rain, a few inches of rain. That is because it was so dry before. Now, there's some people who argue that we should have built more water catchment facilities instead of reverse osmosis plants. But if you're not getting any rain, what's the point? It'll be self-defeating. And the history would have shown in other countries, including Malta and other areas, including the UAE, that the solution ultimately is to build out your water infrastructure and to have more RO plants. And we did exactly that. Now, I can tell you that if my administration was not proactive in building out those plants, you can imagine what the situation in Antigua and Barbuda will be today. 100% of the water that is utilized in Antigua and Barbuda comes from reverse osmosis plants, the various plants. 100%. So when they say that, the government has not performed, the reality is we had planned to, at least several years ago, to ensure that we had water sustainability. And we're going further now. We're looking at the issue of repiping to deal with leaks and even water conservation methods. That's the next stage. And I should tell you too, that we have already paid for yet another RO plant. That's a plant that will be built in Bethesda, and the parts have started to arrive. In fact, that plant will produce 3 million gallons of water per day. So by the first quarter of next year, we should be able to have at least 11 million gallons of water produced daily from RO, that is reverse osmosis plants. And in that case, we will have full water sustainability. The reality is we have made investment. And let me make the point here too, that these plants take at least 18 months to 2 years in order to be built and to be shipped to Antigua and Barbuda. So there's no off-the-shelf solution that you can go to a supplier and say to them that you'd like to have a plant within 6 months or 12 months. And then we even had further delays as a result of COVID. So again, you can see that we were proactive. There's no way, for example, that the additional water supply that we added this year, that we could have achieved that if we had not ordered at least 2 years ago. And that is precisely what happened. So again, that's an area of progress.